Okay, so this session is on Google Forms 2.0. So I do want you to know that this is going to be taking like a new Google form or a Google form and kicking it up a notch to maybe things that you have not seen before when you create a form. So if you have the agenda, I want you to know that I actually put a link on the very top that takes you to a website that somebody has for getting Google certified on level 2. And you have to do this, create your own adventure through a Google form. So it's pretty cool, and we'll talk about that later. So I just wanted you to know that that's one of the things I'm going to teach you today is going to need to be required if you ever want to be certified for Google level 2. So we're going to get started because over here in your apps, of course, is where you're going to find your forms. You can go this way, or you can go into your Google Drive and hit the plus and more, and there you have your Google Forms also. I don't want to share it with anybody, so I'm going to go back out here and pick a form. You have templates that you can use, and I don't know if anybody's actually gone into the gallery and taken a look, but Access, so these are people within Access that have created them and shared them, and just general ones that they give you in Google Forms are out here. So if you create a really cool Google form, you can share it with everybody at Access if you ever feel the need to. I always start with a blank form because I'm usually creating from scratch. I type my name in. And just so you know, when I do this, I type here because if I click over here, it actually brings the name right over. And you can't share this with anybody until you have a name for your form in the top left-hand corner. So just because I have this as the name, I can come over here, even though this is a practice. I spelled that wrong from form. Sorry, apologies. You can then, if you try to duplicate this, you can actually change the date if you want in here, which will not change the name of your form over here. So I just want you to be aware of that. One thing that I want you to make sure that you do too is we talked a little bit about the theme. You can actually choose headers from images. So if you create your own image and you want to upload it, you can put it in there. So I think I had, I really like this one, and I want the word data is what I'm going to use. So when I open this photo for my students, just to make it more interesting, I have this word. And I mean, you can be the part of the picture of the Bitmoji, it can be whatever you want. It will then take my picture and try to create a theme according to the colors of the image that I have uploaded. So they're not all the same. Plus, people that are getting a survey, they don't want to see the same thing over and over again. It's kind of boring. So this is how you're going to kick it up a notch, is adding an image. Now, I mean, you can then go in and change and add whatever colors you wanted. So if you wanted it to be red instead, you can make it red. So don't think that you have to use the theme that they give you, but that is an option out there. The next step that we're going to go is the settings. And I want to make sure that you guys fully understand the settings. There is not a default on to collect people's email addresses. So if you send out a form to your students and your first question is not name, then you are not going to know who's turning a form into you. If you go into your settings and you check that collect email address, because our students are in Youngstown, it will actually put their email address automatically in there. Right here, this means that they have to be in Access to log into the form. If you are giving this to parents or somebody that you're trying to collect information from, you're going to have to make sure you take that off. That is automatically set on there and you cannot change it. Now, I do know that when limit 1 response is in, they are required to go in with Google. At one time, it also correlated with your computer and would collect the IP address. I don't think it does that anymore, but it will only allow one email address to put in a response once. So you have the option to do that. If you don't care how many times they put the answer in, then you would just take that off. Your edit after submit means that they put something in and they want to go back and change it. If you take that off, they do not have that option. And the other thing is if you're collecting data and you want them to see the results as they go along, like for example, if it's the cafeteria and you want to ask what's the favorite meal, you may want them to see what the answers are as you go along. It's not something that really needs to be hidden. So just be aware that those are in there in the general settings. The other thing is during presentation, you can show a progress bar. If your quiz is very long, you may want to have a progress bar. Even if it's short sometimes, kids will get on or parents and be like, how long is the survey? The progress bar will take them along and show them how far they are percentage-wise going through your Google form. The shuffle question order is when you're asking questions for a particular topic. Each one is separate. If you are creating something where if they answer a question and they have to go to another place, you may not want to shuffle the question order, because if you shuffle the question order, the choose your own adventure, or if you make them choose something to go to somewhere else in your form, it will not work like that. You can also, it's defaulted to show a link to submit another form. So this means that if you have people coming up, filling out the form, and you have an iPad at the front table and you want parents to fill out a form, it will automatically click the link and they can add another response for the next person that walks up to the table. What's really cool is once they do it, you can actually send them a little message. Thank you for, oops, sorry. So that will actually go out to them. They will see that on their computer once they fill out your form. So if you are asking somebody in the public to do that, even if you're asking a whole bunch of people at school, when they fill it out, you can just say to them, and even if this is a message for your students, you can say, once you fill this out, please make sure to go to the next step. Please make sure to go find your homework. Please make sure to talk to your teacher. You can put a message in there that they will see once they complete the form, or the quiz, the survey, whatever it is that you have for them.
Tiffany, we do have a question from Mark.
Sure.
If I check collect email, then I do not need to ask your name for question 1. Is that correct?
That is correct. And you can see when it says collect email address, it is right here at the top if you check that box. And then if I go into settings and I take that off, it's actually gone. And I don't know if I maybe I didn't say this correctly. If you have on the restricted to access, since they have to log in with their email, it will still collect their email address. But if that is not on, you want to make sure you ask them what their name is. Did I say it? Is that, Rachel, am I saying that correctly? Does that sound
yes.
Okay?
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I clarify that. So if you already have on the restricted to access, it automatically collects the email. But if you take this off, you have to ask somebody what their name is, because you're not going to know who submitted the form. Okie dokie. I do have on, just so you know, on the agenda pre-fill link, but I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, even though this is where you would go together. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and get into the questions. And over here on the right is where you're going to add the different types of questions. Now I can tell you, if I'm up here and I hit add question, it's going to add in between my 2 questions. So depending on which, you have to make sure you're clicked on the last question if you plan on adding one below. I've made the mistake many a times of putting it in. However, what I do love about Google is no matter where you're at, they have these little dots right here. You can move your questions around wherever you want, and in the order. You can change the order of your questions at any time if you don't have shuffle on. One of my newest favorite features is this import questions. So I can actually click on import questions, and we do surveys in my department a lot. So if I happen to be going down, let's see, here's the webinar survey, and I select that form, I can now have the question that I want to reuse in this form. So if you have questions that you ask your students continually, what period are you in? What class are you in? What Do you know what I mean? You can just go in and take those questions out and reuse them later. You can also think about reusing them if you're giving them a quiz and you want to re-ask them a question that maybe they didn't do well on the quiz before. You don't have to retype it, retype the questions. You can just go in, I can hit import questions, and those questions are dropped right in to your form or your survey. So I'm just going to throw some of these away. You can see that there's just a trash can at the bottom where I can go in and I can delete some of these questions that I want to get rid of. The other thing is it gives you an option to put a title above each question. There's really no reason that I see for this unless you're adding a new section. And if you do add a new section, it gives you the choice to add a title. You can see that right there at the top. There is there's a section for putting a title. So that's up to you. I just have not seen a lot of use for it, but everybody is different. Now, if
Tiffany,
you add, yes.
Sorry, Gail would like to know, can you import from a PDF?
No, this is only allowing you to import questions from other forms. You can see that that is actually the only choice that they're giving me are forms that I've created. There isn't even my Google Docs don't even show up here. So I can't even pull it from another Google document. Now you can put a PDF in here, but I don't, unless it's something you want them to read, because you would add that as an image, and a PDF is actually an image of a document. So if it's a reading passage maybe you want them to have, you would add that as an image to your, so I'm gonna just go into upload. I'm just gonna find a PDF for you real quick. Let's see if that format will work. JPEG. PDF. I don't know what it is. Nope. And see, that file you can't even do as an upload. So it does have to be a certain, and it doesn't tell me what kind of images it will take, but I'm sure it's probably a JPEG, PNG, or something like that that they want you to upload. I haven't had any issues uploading any pictures. So one of the things that I do like, if you are, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself because there was a question. If you decide that you add a section and you don't want it, if you click on this down arrow, where to go? Come on. Right here, sorry, 3 dots, delete the section, and now that whole section is gone. That question moved up and the break is gone in between the 2 questions. So you don't have to, just because you add a section doesn't mean that it needs to stay in there. Your next option is picture. I love these picture questions. These are great for younger children or children that have issues reading words in the very beginning. So it'd be great for kindergarten, preschool, special ed. I can actually go out and search for an image, maybe of a dog. And I'm just going to choose the dog. And this may be my prompt for a picture. I also like that you can now, you didn't used to be able to do that. You can now format the pictures. And also when you have the picture in there, it gives you these 3 dots that I can actually put in the left. I can put it in the center. I can put it in the right. I can trash my picture. I can change the picture if I decide that I don't want that picture. So I have my picture in there. Once I have my picture in here though, you can see I don't have anything below it as a question. So your picture is not necessarily your question. I would then put a blank question down here and say, what color is the dog? And then you have white, and these, of course, are multiple choice questions. The other option that you have is you can add a video in here. If you know the video, it's always easier, or you can search URL, and I'm just going to do cells. And then I'm just going to do an introduction to the cell. It's really cool. And I'm going to hit select, and my video pops in here. Again, when you drop a video in from over here, there is no question attached to it. You also have the choice in here to center it, put it on the right, put it on the left. Sometimes I just put a title up here that just says cell video. And then I would add a question below that says, tell me about the video above. And you can add multiple questions below here about your video. You don't have to just add one question. So those are our different types of questions that you have. Now, what I love is the way you can answer your questions. So of course, multiple choice, there are circles. And if you know anything about our state testing, multiple choice means you can only select one answer. Check boxes means you can select more than one answer. So this would be maybe cell parts. And I would put nucleus and cell wall. But then I might put something that is not a part of it. So then they would go in and check the parts of a cell. So if I want to see so far what my form looks like, I would go to the eyeball. I could take a look at it. I could view it. I would choose. I could choose more than one. I can type in the box and see what that looks like. I view my quizzes a lot because I always want to see what the other person is going to see when they go to take something. Some of the ones that you may not have even thought about using that are on here that are really cool is this multiple choice grid. So if you have a multiple choice grid, and I'm just going to put plant. So these are things that are going to be in rows. So they're going to go across. Nucleus, these ones are going to be at the top. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay. And if I go out and I view this, and I would take a look, so a plant may have a nucleus. An animal cell may have a cell membrane. So I would put choices up here that go along with this, and they can see the different columns, and they can choose one from each column. So just like the multiple choice grid only allows you to select one. If I would change this to checkbox grid, which is really cool, I like this too, I now can select the parts of the plant: nucleus, cell wall, cell membrane, nucleus, cell membrane. And now you have multiple answers for that question that your students can choose. The other one that I really like that a lot of people don't use very often is the linear scale. And this is usually when I'm asking somebody, how do you feel about something? So I'm going to go in, I'm going to say, how do you feel about that? 1 is good, 5 is bad. My question would be up here at the top, and when I would go to view it, they would then pick on the scale from good to bad. How do they know the cell parts? Well, I know them halfway. You can have more than 5 here. One of the things I like about it is you can choose, so it doesn't have to be 5. You can choose up to 10, so they can be a scale 1 to 10. It all depends on what kind of data that you're looking for. You need to make sure when you're looking at these questions and you're trying to figure out what type of questions you want, what data is it you're trying to get at the end. So when we're having conversations, one of the things that primary teachers used to do is they used to collect data on the weather all the time. So one thing you might want to do is maybe a Google form every day. If you want to collect data throughout the year on what does the weather look like, and then talk about that with your students, this could be something you do as a Google form. So you would have them choose, and I would want to do maybe the date. So the first question is, what is today? And then when they go into the form, they're going to be able to pick today's date. And the next thing I might want to put is, what is the weather like? Now, depending on what grade you're in, you can put rain. You have a little picture icon at the end that I can go out and I can find a Google image of rain. So I can choose the picture of rain that I feel that I would like to use and insert that. So they have a cue on which item they would like to select. Maybe I want to say windy. I would go out, I would find a picture, and let's see what Google has out there for windy. Ooh, I like this one. You could have snow. So I'm going to search for my image of snow. I wonder if it's snow. Let's see a snowflake. There we go. So I'm going to insert that. So as I go along and I give them all the choices, and I view this, I'm going to realize that when I put the date in for today, when I start to collect the data, it's going to be by date. But let's say I have students and I really don't want to know the date. I want to collect it by the month. So at the end of the year, we'll have what the weather was like every day for the month. So I might want to go back and change that question. Instead of having the date, I might just say month. And then in the next question, and I would make this a drop down. The one thing that you want to do to make sure that you don't have a lot of mistakes in your data is give people choices to select things and not have them type them. A lot of our students may misspell things. Some people use capital letters, some people use lowercase letters, and then when you're looking at that data, it skews it and doesn't make it all correct. So then it won't put it in a nice little chart for you at the end. One of the other things is you can see that I actually purposely skipped a month. You have your little icons over here and you can move these up and down and it changes the number order for you automatically. Now I can tell you, if you have a form out there and you start to collect data and then you go in and you move these around, it does not move the data in the columns. So if I decide that I want this name up here at the top and I start to move these around because I don't like how the data looks, you just need to be aware that when you go to start looking at the data, it's not going to be in the first column. It's going to be in the fourth column where it started collecting data. So let's get to some fun stuff. Okay. So now I have this out there and teachers don't have a lot of time as it is. So one of the things that this is famous for is the quiz part. The quiz section is making this a quiz. It's going to be self-grading. You need to make sure you go into the cogwheel and you turn this on. Once I turn this on, if none of the questions are extended response, you can give it back immediately. If you don't, you're just going to click later. Sometimes they let the students see the missed questions. If you're giving the feedback later, I don't see why there is any reason why you shouldn't leave these on. If you're giving immediate feedback and the students can tell the other students what they missed and what the wrong answer is, and they can have conversation about the questions before everybody completes it, you may want to turn some of these off. You may not want to show them a correct answer if the student sitting next to them hasn't completed the form yet. So I'm going to turn this on. So once you turn that on, when you click on your question, you now see a box at the bottom that says answer key. I'm going to go ahead and click on answer key. And right away, I know that I'm looking at the answer key. When it starts to ask me about points, I'm going to make this 1 point and the answer is white and it's green. And then I would click done. And you can see that this automatically shows up. When I go to the cell parts, if I click on it and I say that there's an answer key, I can decide how many points it is, but I would have to give them feedback on that question because that is not a question where you can give them certain feedback because it's a linear scale. Sorry. Answer key, again, even with the drop down, I can make this how many points. I can choose more than one in a drop down. I can say they're all correct. I can say 2 of them are correct. I can choose as many as I want in a drop down box, and then I can go ahead and hit done. So do we have any questions so far?
Mark had said, is it possible to use this while you're teaching and have kids do a check-in? Maybe have the entire class see the results and talk about it. And then he said, never mind. So you may have already answered it.
Oh, okay. Yes, you can absolutely do that, which is really great. And that's how I think that this should be used, because what's nice is once they start filling in their responses, you're going to get these great little graphs right here that don't necessarily show anybody's name. So that way nobody feels like selected or pointed out, because it just gives you the group, the whole group. Now there is going to be a choice on here for individual that you can go back as a teacher and look at individual responses. But in general, you can just click on the response tab and show it as a class. And I do have examples of that. One of the other things that I really like about this is that you can make something, it's called response validation, okay? One of the reasons why I do this would be for a breakout, and you can see that I added a lock box that I had in here. When you go to put in your answer key, and I would put the, well, I don't want to put, I'm sorry. When I go down here to the 3 dots and it says response validation, right here is you can choose. So it's going to be text, and I'm going to say the word has to be Tiffany. So no matter who's putting their name in, this is going to be the correct answer, and they will not be able to submit their form until they find the correct answer. So if you would be asking the students a math question right here, and you wanted them to get the right answer before they move on, if you select that response validation, students cannot move on to the next question until they answer this one correctly. Now, the one thing that I do want to make sure that you know is that automatically now required is on every question. If you look at every question I answered or I asked, they all have this little red asterisk on it. The asterisk means that the questions are required. This used to be something that you had to turn on, but it is now on by default now. So if you don't want to make a question required, you need to make sure you turn it off. So they have changed that. So I just want you to be aware that that is automatically on now, required, and now you have to turn it off if you don't want it on. One of the other things that's really nice, and I know that they went over this before, but just to make sure that you know this, is when you give a quiz, this lock mode. If you are on a Chromebook, you would turn that on when you give them this, and they will not be able to go to any other tabs or websites on their Chromebook. So it's really cool once they open it up how it's going to, and you can see it says it must be on a managed Chromebook. So this Chromebook has to be one that's given by the district. And then once it's on, they will not be able to search the web to locate the answers while they're taking your quiz. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they may not have the answers in the desk that they're trying to look at, but they won't be able to search them on the computer. So any questions on giving a quiz, answer validation, which means making sure that they put in an answer before they move to the next question?
I don't see any yet.
Okay. So I'm going to go back up to the top. And I'm going to tell you one of the really cool things about a Google form is the next part that I have on the agenda, which is called logic branching. Logic branching is almost like you can make a choose your own adventure story, or you could have a vocabulary question that maybe they don't get right and you want them to do a reteaching. It could even be a comprehension section, and if they don't answer it correctly, then it will take them to a different section of the form than what the rest of the students will see. Now, I just want you to know that inside of here, for the logic branching, I'm going to take you back up to the top. On the link that I shared with you, there are templates on the bottom. So if you wanted your students to create something like this on their own without you, there's actually a templates that you can make a copy of, so it makes sense, so they know what to put on each one. So the first page would be the question and in the story, and if they get it right, they would go to the right. If they would go left, they would go down here. This just helps you to keep your brain focused and on the right track. So when you're on a different section in your form, you can make sure that each of the sections has the right information on it. There are 3 templates down here that are actually pretty cool that you could use. So this is the introduction. This is where if they pick option 1, so the kids are going to go for a walk. Are they going to a forest or are they going to a city? So the forest would be over here, the city would be over here, and then they could choose their own adventure in a story, and they could create that for you, or you could create it for them. There's also a template in here, which is really cool. That is in Google Drawings, but it's more like if you ask a question, and maybe this is for vocabulary or reading comprehension, and they get it right, they go to number 3. If they get number 3 right, they're done. This would be more like a reteaching. So I'm going to ask you a comprehension question or vocabulary question. If you miss it, I'm going to send you to page 2. If you miss that, I'm going to send you to page 4. If you miss that, you have another chance, and then we have to end, and then you're going to have to collect that data and figure out what you're going to need to do that student, because those reteaching strategies did not work. So this is a template that you would use if you're trying to reteach a strategy, but this is just a graphic organizer to help keep you on the right track and to remember which section that students are going to go to get the right answer. So I'm going to add a question at the bottom and kind of start this. Oh, I'm going to move this above. Thought I was clicked on the right one, but I wasn't. So here's my question down here, and I'm going to say, what does the word imagination mean? And then you could give them some answers. And this could be definitions that you already have, definitions that you've been working with them. Okay, so these are your options. Now you need to be aware when you're making one of these logic forms or quizzes that you need to use multiple choice questions, because you have to have a definitive answer to make them go to the next section. So down here on the bottom, do you see where it says go to section based on the answer? If you could add that, this is where it says I would continue to section whatever. Now I'm going to have to add a section in order to have that option right here. Now you can see, look, there's section 2, there's section 1. So if I choose, I make up in my mind, I'm going to go to section 2. Section 2, I might call reteach. And then I can ask them another question about the word imagination. Or I may give them another story about comprehension, or what is a fairy tale. And you would give them options here. I would need to add my sections before I started this. So when I go into my multiple choice questions, I can make sure that I can go to whatever section I need to go to once they're ready. Now I know that section 2 is the reteaching section. So when I look at the drop down list, I know the name of that section. So if I wanted to name section 3 fairy tale, I would give that the name. So again, this is for my organization. I could make sure that when I'm in these options, I'm going to have them go to the correct section in my form. Now, this would be the same thing as if I was creating a story for them. If my first question was, would you like to go to the country or would you like to go to the city? Country would be section 2, the city would be section 4. So then I could ask them something. In the city, you would see blah, 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 blah. All that information would be here, and they would go to whatever section you want them to go to then take the next step in their story. Do we have any questions about logic branching?
I don't know if it's about logic branching, but Mark and Cheryl are both asking, is there a limit to how many questions you can ask?
Nope. I have never seen a limit on how many questions you can actually put in here. But if you're asking a lot of questions, like I said, I would definitely make sure to add on to here, just as they go along, show the progress bar. So that way they have an idea of how far that they're getting along before maybe the time is up in the period. So if they know that they are at 75% done, they only need so many more minutes to finish that quiz. Where if you don't put that progress bar in there and you have a lot of questions, they're not going to know where they are in the form.
Heather says logic branching is so cool.
It is amazing. So you can use this again for so many. This could even be for math. So if you're putting math questions in here and they're giving you the wrong answer, you can ask them the same concept again differently in a different section if you have them go to another question. And also you got to remember on the backside, you're collecting all that data and you're going to see what students had to do the relearning, reteaching, or relearning compared to the other students that were able to maybe only do it in 3 questions. That's going to help you also. So I know this is after the view responses, but since we're making questions, I wanted to make sure I got to this. So you can see I have this little icon that you guys might not have on my forms. I added this so I could ask math questions. One of the most difficult things is a math teacher that's trying to add math questions on here, because you can't go in and add a question and type a math question correctly. You can't put fractions or decimals or things like that. So let me add a question. There it is. So I'll show you in a minute, because this is just an extension and I actually have a link on there that's up here on the top and I just added it. But when I click on my question, you can see it opens up a bar at the bottom of my screen. And if I click on the first one that says editor on it, I have these 3 dots. Now I can ask a question too, like, what does, and then I can go over here and decide what kind of question I want to ask. So I can actually, I should be able to, come on, fractions. Come on, I should be able to scroll through here. I was scrolling through here yesterday. Oh, so let me take the text out first. Come on, something that I was just doing. Don't you hate when you have something and then you start using it, all of a sudden it's not working the way you did all of your practice questions? So I'm going to close this and I'm going to try to reopen it one more time. No, usually if I go in here, I can actually scroll and it will give me, and if for some reason it's not scrolling in here anymore, it's scrolling back here, it would give me all kinds of things. It would give me 2 boxes where I could actually type a fraction over here. So if I had 2, and now it's working, 2/3, it would do that. And then if I went over here and I decided I wanted to be There we go. If I needed parentheses or I needed to put something else in, now I have all of these options in here where I can go down and pick whatever it is I want in here. So if you're a high school math teacher or you teach science or you need these, here's just greater than and less than. You can even add that in there. Where normally that would be very difficult for you to add into your form. And then once I'm done, I would hit insert math. Come on. And there's my question. And you can, again, it's a picture, so you can center it, you can do whatever you want. And if you need to have a math question as an answer, you can go back in and you can create those questions or those answers, and you can insert them, and they're like picture images that are right in there using the math tools. But that's one way to use maybe algebra or formulas and put them in a Google form through that extension. Because otherwise it's very difficult. Usually what people are doing is taking pictures of the formula and inserting the picture, and then the students just pick the picture that's correct. So I think that's a really cool extension and makes a teacher's life much easier and goes right inside there. I'm just making sure on my agenda that I covered everything before we go into data. Now we need to go out, and I'm going to use a form that already has data in it. And I closed my form that I was going to use. So do I have any questions I can answer while I locate my form?
I don't see any.
I
don't see any questions yet.
So the other thing that you need to be aware of, and I want to make sure that I emphasize this again, you don't want to go to these 3 dots and add collaborators and send this out to people. This allows them to edit your form. So if I haven't said that enough, I just want to make sure that I'm emphasizing that that's not how you send out a form to other folks. You want to go in here and you want to either email it this way, or you want to take the link, or you can hit copy or Control C. And then I'm going to go out to, let's see if I can find the chat. I'm going to put this in there for you guys. So if you want, I'm going to have you guys take this form, if you can click on it real quick, to get some data, because I closed my form and I don't want to take forever searching it for you guys. And I'm going to show you in real time, if you guys just go in and start to answer some of those questions. What color is the dog? Looking at the cell video. What's the weather like out today? What month is it? Just go ahead and answer some of those questions. And then as a teacher, you're going to see right here, as students start to submit the survey, what does this look like to you? And I just took my quiz, and you can see it tells me, because I give immediate feedback, that I got 3 out of 3. And it tells me how many points in the corner for each part of the quiz that I gave points to. So I'm going to close that. So I have 7 responses, so that's pretty good. Now you can see that I collected your email. So at the top, it actually has your email information at the top. In the middle, it actually gives me the average score for your class. So how many people got 1 out of 3 is the median right now. The range is 0 out of 3. The average is 1.88. So the correct responses for name, 0 out of 8. So nobody got my name right. And it's not that important, but it's just data that, and I can also see what answer everybody put in. What color is the dog? 8 people got that question correct. You can talk about that information right there in your class as you're doing it. I know that there used to be a kindergarten teacher. She no longer teaches kindergarten anymore, but while the students would go to lunch, she would, when they came back from lunch, she would ask them something in a Google form every day about what they learned in the morning. just to collect that data and then talk about the answer with the students and see how many of the students actually remembered the information from the morning to the afternoon. And it didn't take a lot. It was just one question that they all had to answer. Here's the parts of the cell. So 6 people put part A and 3 people put B. And then you can even see what's the weather like. 88% of the class said it's windy, snowy. So for myself, for the months, what's nice is once you have this data, if it's in September, I can look at all of the weather for September and create a graph in October. So right here is just some information on the fly. You can see here's all the graphs, 100% of everybody picked part A, part B, all of that. You also have an individual tab where you can go over and look at the individual answers that each person put in. Some teachers like to look at this. They like to nail this down, go down here. I can see what Rachel did. I can see which one she got right, which one she got wrong. All of the information is in there and you can look at them one-on-one. I'm a spreadsheet girl. So I love to open my spreadsheets, and this will always create one, and it's usually the name of the form. It will say responses. If you want to add this to a spreadsheet you already have because you want more information, you can do that also. But I love to use spreadsheets. So if I was going in here and I was tracking this data, let's say for the year, I could go in and I can insert a chart or a graph. It lets me for a second. My computer's frozen right now. It's thinking. But I can go in and I can insert whenever it decides it's ready for me to do that again. And I can take the month. So if I want to take the month, I'm going to take the chart style that I might want. Let's go back in here. And I'm going to just want maybe I would want a bar graph. And in my bar graph, I can go down and I can choose which columns that I want to make a graph for. I don't have to use all of the, see, what's a fairy tale? That's what it's looking at right now is one question. So I can actually choose the questions and put the data together and give them a graph that will give them information throughout the year. And you can see I was clicked on what is a fairy tale. That's why it created me a chart on that column. So if I wanted one for the weather, I'll close this. And I'm going to insert a chart on the weather. I can see how many windy days and how many rainy days. And if you were doing this one day at a time, now this, of course, everybody put these answers in, so it's by people. But if you did this once a day in your class and you started collecting that data, you would have that data through the whole year and you would know how many days were windy, how many were rainy, how many were snowy. And that might be a conversation that you would want to have for the kids and talk about it throughout the year. Oh, I'm sorry, I closed my agenda. I want to make sure I have that open. Also, if you go in here, one of the things that's really nice is that you can still use that filter tool that we talked about before. If you have a lot of students and you just want to see the students that were struggling that got a 0, I can go in there, hit OK, and it will give me who gave me a 0. Sorry, Greg. Didn't mean to point you out. If I want to see all the students that were my accelerated students and I wanted to know what that looked like, I would hit OK, and I could look at the number of students that are receiving 100%. And these would be my group of students that I could have move on to the next level. This right here could help you immensely on knowing what students you need to work with and how maybe you need to group them in order to work with them on a certain concept that you're teaching. Just by filtering that information and knowing what you need to look at. So I'm going to remove my filter. Well, so this is the data that you guys can look at. These are the graphs you can share with your students on different information that you pulled up from here. So if these are math problems, you can see what the math problems look like. Mark, I don't see you in here either. see if you're in here. Nope, I don't see you in here either. That's interesting.
Did you go all the way through to submit?
Yeah, because you can usually see everyone's information as they put it in. And also it gives you, just so you know, the questions that are in here. If you need to give, see, it says 1 ungraded response. This is all the feedback that I need to give to everybody. So this was your email address. I had gone in there and given you a point if you put your email address in. And look, I see Mark right here. Interesting. I see his name down there, but I don't know. Let's see what email he used. He used his. Oh, you just hit it. Oh, I see over there. I was like, now I see 11 responses. Okay, I'm not crazy. But this should give you a little bit of information, and it's definitely going to challenge you to create a form for your students. And it'll allow you to collect different data than maybe you were getting before. If you have them have reteaching in here, it might take a little bit more time, but you're going to get better feedback from your students, and you're going to know more where to focus if you're able to create a form this way compared to just a regular bunch of multiple choice questions that you would put in.